distinguished ministers and dear participants, with the organization of our Trade Ministry and DEİK, we are in Türkiye and Africa Business and Economy Forum, and welcome to Türkiye Africa International Civil Aviation Cooperation. For translation, you can find Turkish number 1. Distinguished guests, now we would like to invite the Minister of Transport and Infrastructure of Republic of Türkiye, Abdülkadir Uraloğlu, onto the stage to deliver their opening speech. Distinguished colleague, our dear guests from many different countries, dear representatives of our transport sector, it is an honor to host you here in Istanbul. I would like to extend my gratitude and respect to all of you. In close relations, we have continued our communication and ties with Africa, and this organization, which is the 5th Türkiye Africa Business and Economic Forum, thanks to this organization, we came together with you again, and I would like to say I am very pleased and happy to be here. And Türkiye, because of its position and location in the world, is a hub at the moment, and with its geopolitical location, the whole continent of Africa is of great importance as well, and this importance has been increasing for many decades. And in this panel, we will talk about civil aviation, but also under the same umbrella, I think we will put forward many different outputs based on our cooperation in this sector. And the continent of Africa is increasing its importance in the global trade and for the development of the trade in African countries, and also internationally, Africa has a great location, and both east, west, and north and south transportation is facilitated by the continent of Africa thanks to its location, and equity and win-win policies are the basis of our relations between Türkiye and Africa, and Türkiye will continue to increase its diplomatic relations and trade and cooperation. And within this framework, our president has visited African continent for more than 50 times, and it is the highest number of travels by a head of state internationally, with these 50 visits to Africa. And this intense relations that we continue to have with Africa shows its effect in not just transportation, but all different areas. And already Turkish Airlines, Ajet, Pegasus, Sun Express, 4 of our main carriers fly to the continent of Africa. Ajet and Pegasus and also Sun Express Airlines, due to their fleet structure, they can go to the northern part of the continent only, but Turkish Airlines can fly to all parts of the continent. And Turkish Airlines has this big scope, and we would like to underline that they are the airlines that fly to most international locations, and they fly to 50 different locations in international locations. And after Ethiopian Airlines, Turkish Airlines fly to the most cities and most points in African continent. And Turkish Airlines, thanks to this extensive network of flights, facilitates and contributes to the relations between Africa and Turkey. Turkish Airlines, their existence in Africa is not limited to carrying passengers only, but to cargo as well, and this facilitates and strengthens the trade as well. And within this framework, Turkish Airlines is also playing a strategic role in opening the continent of Africa to the international trade. And this success is not just a coincidence, of course. Our country is in the crossroads of Asia, Africa, and Europe continents, and within 4 hours you can reach to areas including 67 countries, which corresponds to a trade volume of $1.5 trillion. So this network is great for investment, and we have done many investments in that sense, and our air traffic and air transportation policies helped us bring our country to the highest points among international companies. And $25 billion of investment has been made, and 1.4 airports are being opened annually, and we had 26 airports before, but within the last 15 years we increased this number to 50, and in 2024, second in Europe and seventh in the world, our airports, leaving Frankfurt behind, Istanbul airport has ranked second in 2024 in carrying the most number of passengers. And as of 2025, triple independent piste operations, runway operations started to be conducted, and this is the first time outside of Europe. Istanbul is the first airport to do this. And we talk about a daily movement of 1,150 planes. And we will increase the number of runways to 6. We have now 3 parallel runways, and now we are aiming to increase the number to 6. And in the project or construction and management of the air traffic and operation of airports, we have gained extensive experience, and this valuable know-how that we gathered, we are ready to share this with all countries, everyone, and especially Africa. And we are always open to cooperation in this area. And beyond that, our relation between Turkey and Africa has been deepening, of course, and it's becoming stronger. And we all remember, because of the natural disasters, pandemics, so all those disasters caused some disruptions in the supply chains, and These disruptions actually increase the need for logistics and transport of materials. And when we look at the opportunities the continent of Africa brings to the world, when you evaluate this on a global scale, we have to look into the developments in the connection points or the crossroads of different continents, and Africa, just like Turkey, is of great importance in that sense. And I also want to share something else with you. In June, in Istanbul, Global Transportation Connectivity Forum was held in Istanbul, and for Africa we held a special session in this forum, and from 80 countries, 38 ministers and 17 vice ministers, deputy ministers attended this forum, and Mauritania, Somalia, Republic of Congo, Djibouti, Liberia, Ghana, and our country, with the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure of Türkiye and the responsible ministers of African countries that I just mentioned, we signed an agreement, and I wanted to remind you that, and between Türkiye and African countries, we also worked on increasing the connectivity, not just through aviation, but also with ports and naval transportation as well. And we are still committed to increase our cooperation, and we are continuing our diplomatic relations, and I would like to invite you to become a part of this agreement. And as I come to the end of my speech, as the Transport and Infrastructure Minister of Turkey, I want to reiterate that we are open to make any contribution that we can, and we are committed to increasing and deepening our relations. And I would like to thank DEİK for this beautiful organization, and I would like to reiterate how happy and pleased I am to welcome you here to Istanbul. Thank you very much, distinguished Minister. Dear participants, now we would like to invite Mr. Muhammed Salem Ashaubi, Head of Transport of the Libyan State. The floor is yours.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شكرا لمعالي وزير النقل على دعوتهم لنا اليوم لإلقاء هذه الكلمة. السادة الوزراء، السادة.
I would like to start my speech by extending my gratitude and thanks to the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure, Mr. Abdülkadir Uraloğlu, and I am very happy to be here at the 5th Türkiye Africa Business and Economic Forum. in all countries in the African Union, we are talking about the economic cooperation between different countries, and we are very pleased to be talking about the cooperation possibilities and opportunities between these between Turkey and African continent. And when we look at Libya, we have again extensive experience, and in the Libyan market, Türkiye has a great experience, and the trade volume between Turkey and Libya exceeded $10 billion, and in terms of reaching our safe and secure position that we have now, Turkey has played a great role. Ladies and gentlemen, the strategic door location of Libya to the African continent. Of course, we are attaching great importance to increasing our transportation network, and also to facilitate trade, we are implementing various projects, and one of the most important one of these projects is in the north of Libya, the free zone to the Agadez city in Niger, the road that connects these 2 points, and also it will include this same project will include power plants as well. Also for the modernization of the Trablus International Airport is ongoing, and it will become a hub and transport point for many different locations. And I would like to say that we are really happy to be here, pleased to be here. We are always working to cooperate with other countries to increase cooperation and communication between us. And we would like to also thank the Republic of Turkey for inviting us here. Thank you. Thank you, distinguished minister. And distinguished minister, we also invite you and other panelists onto the stage, please. Thank you. You have some.
Sayın Bakanlara teşekkür ederim.
Thanks to our esteemed ministers. Now we will start Turkish-African Civil Aviation Cooperation Panel. Mr. Dr. Uğur Erdoğan will be the moderator, and our panelists are Professor Dr. Kemal Yüksek, Mr. Fırat Ocak from Aviation Development Director of IGA Istanbul Airport. We have Dauda Ture, President of the Auto And we have Mr. Mahmoud Niyazi Hulash, Capital Management and Air Seychelles ex-CFO, Professor Dr. Charles Lincap, Investment Watch CEO, and Mr. Hikmet Mesut Türkseven, Turkish Airlines African Sales Vice President, and Professor Dr. Kemal Yüksek, Civil Aviation General Manager. Esteemed guests, welcome to our panel. In this panel, we will talk about aviation issues. We're very honored to welcome you in Istanbul, in Turkey. This event means a lot for us, as you know. Africa, as you know, is the new rising power of the world. And it's also an important place for the Turkish Republic state. There is a big Turkish-African brotherhood strategy that we have fostered for many years. I want to especially underline the fact that Türkiye has never seen Africa as a commercial and trade market. It's not only about selling our goods or investing in. What matters for us is helping the development and progress of Africa, and to base this on a win-win principle and to progress together. This we call a special brotherhood. That's always we mention it as special brotherhood. And of course, between Turkish and African relations, there's a major driving force in that, which is aviation. Aviation is one of the major factors supporting the development of countries, both in passengers and cargo transport. Maybe not in volume, but in terms of value, 30% of the global trade is carried with airline cargo. When we look at Turkey today, Türkiye is the major air bridge connecting Türkiye to the world. So aviation is a very important factor. In the last 20 years, 22 years after the deregulations, once the airline market is liberated, has improved a lot. And there is a major actor for that to happen, the General Directorate of Turkish Civil Aviation. Our esteemed General Manager is here, so thank you so much to our esteemed General Manager for being with us today. The question I want to ask you is, the African countries are on the verge of a major improvement in terms of aviation, like many others. The African Civil Aviation Union and all the other partners are also working on the deregulation of the market. So as the Civil Aviation Authority and as being one of the major stakeholders of the market and as the regulating body, what would you be saying to lead, guide, or navigate? Esteemed moderator, esteemed participants, I greet you all with respect, first of all, and especially Turkey in terms of the framework of Turkish-African Business and Economic Forum. I think it's a big opportunity to have another aspect in a strategic field like aviation, and we see that African countries are going through a process that we can say it can be a model for other countries as well. As you know, there are three major safety, security, and sustainability are the three major aspects of aviation. This is the tripod the entire aviation is built on. This forum is mostly economic related, so we will talk about the economic aspects, but as a base, aviation is different from other transport modes because of safety and security aspects, and all the other activities should sit on that tripod. So, as our minister has given certain numbers, in terms of our relationship with Africa, we have 53 points and 39 countries that we are flying, and one more country will be added as of March next year. So that means we fly to 80% of Africa, and we make this connection. And we are the most widespread airlines after an African airline. And our whole country supports this. So the connection of Africa to the rest of the world is through our country. After the years of 2000, with the right movements, we now own the most important airline in our country, along with the airlines flying to the most number of destinations. These are, of course, a result of the strategically taken decisions. Especially in the aviation industry, the liberty of the field or not having oppression is very important. Letting it to flow naturally is important. A major movement was done in 2003, 2003, the liberation of the aviation. And also we have the capacity to have qualified human capacity. And in terms of Africa, and the current trend in Africa is what we can suggest. I want to make a couple of suggestions in terms of countries, and then I will give examples from the EU legislation. Right now, the African countries, just like the European countries, among themselves they need to strengthen their civil aviation internally. And this needs to be a data-based activity. The ICAO's expectations and the prerequisites must be taken into account. They need to catch up with the standards, and then regionally and internationally, maybe an AESA organization can be prepared. When we show Europe as an example, this process starts with safety and security, and then the other arrangements will be done here. And within this, for the last 4 or 5 years, as a platform, and how many can be done? We have this systematic that we are putting into practice, which we call new aviation approach, and it has 3 pillars. One of the first ones is a civil aviation management system. Since there is not a mature product in this field, we wanted to do this. Also, just like in Africa, we want to bring the quality of aviation to a higher level in a short period of time. This is why we believe this software, this management system software, was necessary. So you can use this ERP, this automation system, this software, even though you are not very experienced, you can have a system in alignment with ICAO prerequisites using this software. So it can be possible to make mirroring. The countries can obtain this software. The second point is the human resources, the human capacity to train these people. Standardization, assessment, and calibration done objectively requires a certain human competence, because the ICAO expects competence-based and evidence-based licenses. So on that point, we are using the corporate transformation model, which includes a human resources platform. It's a double-sided tool. The first one deals with the human resources model. We produce this generically, which departments, which divisions, which profiles, and what kind of trainings do they need to have. We prepare the software for this. Thanks to this, we can replicate the civil aviation of any country's system. So if the executives want to know which divisions, which departments they need to establish, they don't need to spend time on that, because it's already embedded in the system. The other pillar is the sector aspect, and this tells us what needs to be done in the sector, like the air controllers, the pilots, the technicians, and to train them with these competences. We provide a digital platform. And this ecosystem, we will have the same we do this in 6 countries, and all of these we can then deliver it to the people on a platform, on a global platform. And it's also making it easier to recognize the mutual licenses. All the African countries' licensing and training activities will be equivalent to those in Turkey, and they will be objectively structured on this platform. They won't have a problem with international recognition. I told you 3 legs: automation, human resources. These are very important software, which I told you already, which are almost 95% completed. And the third one are the useful services. There are some practical solutions, like obstacle limitation system. This will control the construction around the airports. This software is also being actively used. Using the e-government application, our citizens can check what kind of height is permitted to build around an airport. So also the unmanned aerial vehicles, and for drones, we have a self-developed operational system, which are being tested now, and it will be operational soon. So we also included the unmanned vehicle, aerial vehicles, and drones system into this, and we will be more than happy to deliver it to the African countries. In our current Istanbul Academy or in our center in Ankara, we are ready to give any kind of support. That's all I have to say. And while I listened to you, I was very excited. We do a lot of important things as the Civil Aviation General Directorate. Just like FAA, you are likely to become an important regulation body globally. Thank you so much. My next question will be to Mr. Fırat Ocak. And Istanbul Airport, IGA, when you land, It is a meeting point of the world, as we see when we land to the airport. It actually connects the world, and especially for African countries, it is the most connected airline, even though it is outside of Africa. In connecting Africa, it's the most destination points. Can you please tell us about certain specifications of Istanbul Airport, and what is the significance of IGA in connecting Africa? Thank you so much for including us in such an important forum. We're more than happy to be here. Just like our esteemed minister and esteemed general manager mentioned, when the airport was opened in the April of 2019, we believe that we changed the balance of the global aviation. We had 66 airlines operating back then, and today it is 116. So we are hosting the biggest number of airlines, one of the biggest ones, hosting the most number of airlines, and we are the most destinations with direct flights. Also, we give support to many more. Just like our minister said, this was only possible with the recent infrastructure. We have 1.4 million square meters area. We have 5 active runways, and 3 of them, with the support of civil aviation, can be independently operated, which gives us an enormous capacity. And Turkish Airlines is the apple of our eye. And in our airlines, apart from Turkish Airlines, we have 15 African airlines that we are hosting. So including Turkish Airlines, we have about 450 flights weekly. This is a very, very important number. 450 frequency is very important to connect Turkey to Africa. We hosted around 6 million passengers, and it has an annual increase of 5%. Africa is very, very important for us. We see a major potential, and the propensity to fly, the ratio of flight numbers on population is very, very small. African population is almost 20% of the global population, but the ACR numbers tell us that the flight percentage is only 2.5. They had 236 million passengers, but there is the potential for 9.5 billion passengers, which tells us that there's a major, major potential there. And our team, the aviation development, is our goal, and we want to increase the passenger number, the frequency number, and to welcome new passengers. Some of us are specifically dealing with African airlines, and they work to increase the frequency, and we support it with data. We looked at the numbers yesterday together, and Istanbul Airport is number 1 in transferring the African passengers to Europe. Of course, our geopolitical position helps this. Our frequency to other major airports also have a role in this. Also in Asia and America connections, we are in top 5. But we want to increase that percentage and move above. As Istanbul Airport, we have no capacity problems, which gives us a major competitive edge for European, Middle Eastern, or other competitive airports. So we would like to invite everyone to use Istanbul Airport. Thank you so much.
To our African brothers visiting here. First question is for Mr. Tore Doğada. Sir, you are a professional, but also you are a pilot. You are from the field. You know aviation, you know the technical side, you know the professional side, and you had duties in the government, and you know the policy side. So, according to you, the importance of aviation for Africa and the dream of African Union, inter-African connection and single African sky, is it easy to reach? Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to try to speak. I wish I had spoken before the head of a company, Turkish company. He has said some of the things I would like to say, but I'm going to say some more. I'm Toure Dauda. I'm a senior pilot and president of the flight academy in Abidjan called Aero Club d'Abidjan. And my presence here is to talk about mostly about training of pilot, because we would like the single African air transport market, which is the SAATM, to be a reality. It would be a reality with partners like Turkey. And as you're a fast-moving company in Africa, we want to take advantage of this exponential, fast-growing market in terms of organizing a single market in Africa to allow our companies for regional and all-inclusive African trade, especially in aviation. Africa has one of the fastest aviation industry in the world, and we cannot be away from this movement. That's why I'm encouraging countries like Turkey to put emphasis in terms of training, because we, the African pilot, we do not want to be just spectators of what's going on in the world. We want to be part of the system. We'd like to take advantage of your training system, your training infrastructure, and don't hesitate to move toward the state and the private sector. We are also a private sector in terms of aviation. You know, like the Boeing, one of the Boeing reviews said, from 2025 to 2044, there will be a need of 23,000 pilots in Africa. 23,000 pilots in Africa. But these pilots have to be African people, mostly, except from Morocco and South Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa don't have the advantage of having good training center. We'd like to have this collaboration with you to enable our schools and academies to have good training, because I dream of a day when we would like to have in the same cockpit Turkish pilot and Ivorian, Senegalese, Zambian, or any other pilot in the same cockpit. And then we'll say we made it. And that's what we're looking for. And to come to your answer, I will say, yes, Africa, we can do it, because in the agenda 2063 of the African Union, we are moving toward an open market. An open market says there will be more opportunities, especially for you, the Turkish. You know, traditional partners, business partners of Africa has been pulling out. So there's room for you. Take advantage of it. But let us be working together to make it a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a guest from Mauritius, Mr. Niyazi Holash. Welcome to Turkey. Mr. Holash, I want to ask a question to you about connectivity. You are from Mauritius, an important island in the world, important touristic destination, a financial center, and the only country in the region which Turkey has a free trade agreement. And in all our meetings in Mauritius, always one topic discussed, making Mauritius a gateway for Africa. But when we look at the gateway, this connectivity, there is a problem mainly, because connectivity between African countries, especially small island developing nations, are not well developed. So, on your side, for a small island developing state, because you are a professional from Mauritius, you know both Air Seychelles and Air Mauritius side, they have limited fleet, so what can be done for this? These all countries want to be the gateways, but connection to other countries are limited with 3 or 4 countries. Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Yes, you can hear me now. Thank you, Dr. Erdogan, for that question. In fact, we relate very much to what you're saying. Mauritius is a small island. It's a dot in the Indian Ocean. So we are isolated. But despite being isolated, the position we are in, whether geographically, historically with the sea routes, or whether economically and politically speaking, we are strategically located. So yes, we are a tourism hotspot. In the ranking for doing business, the World Bank doing business rankings in Africa, we regularly top the spot in Africa on the ease of doing business. And that provides a solid foundation. But transitioning from an island success to a continental gateway, there's one thing which is missing, as Dr. Erdogan alluded to, it is connectivity. So we see aviation not just as a facilitator of that connectivity, but as a strategic driver, a driver of economic, political, and social integration. So from an economic perspective, you see, with aviation, if we are to make it happen as a gateway, we are fully conscious that we cannot do it alone. We have to work with partners, and partners like TÜRKİYE, Turkish Airlines, or any other airlines for that matter. That cooperation is going to be important. So where we see there's a role, okay, for Mauritius is probably from a sea air logistics trade hub. How? Where we are located, we got privileged economic ties with India and the rest of Asia and into Africa as well. So Mauritius could be that bridge which connects Asia, Mauritius into Africa. So when you talk of a sea air model, okay, where it will be interesting is that with companies like Turkish Airlines, and it also matters that we sign the right freedom rights, okay, to be able to overfly, and there needs to be a more open skies. I'll be the first to agree to that. So it can be a hub whereby high value and time sensitive components can be located and exported into Africa. Expanded air cargo capacity. So it works to that urgency as well. Yes, there's good sea connectivity, there's a point there where you can connect, but from an urgency perspective, having Mauritius, expand its air cargo capacity, it will not be able to do it on its own, but with airlines like Turkish Airlines, that possibility is there. Efficient customs and digitalization, even at the level of the African Union, but generally speaking at the OECD level, there is a push to have not only harmonized codes for imports, but also from access to information, digitalization of customs. That is an area which we need to be focusing on, not just as a country, okay, but also as part of larger economic blocs like the African Union, like the SADC, COMESA, etc., or the Africa Free Trade, Continental Free Trade Agreement. And strategic route network. That is extremely important. Why? Because, as Dr. Erdogan said, we're a small airline. And the airlines in the Indian Ocean are also fairly small. The only way to foster economic growth is to improve connectivity between people, between peoples from different countries. And the way we do that is really viewing Africa as one Africa. There are certainly initiatives in the vision which Dr. Dawda Traore just alluded to, the Vision 2063, but it's not like we need to wait for that to happen. On an individual country, bilateral or trilateral, multilateral basis, There are already initiatives which even airlines are taking to be able to serve their countries better by having more open skies. So by doing so, it will help have better economies of scale. With the economies of scale, the unit cost will go down. And one of the big problems we see, in Mauritius, and that extends a bit into Africa as well, is the cost of travel. It is expensive simply because we do not have the critical mass of aircraft equipment, and that is what the big problem is. Now, Mauritius is a recognized international financial center in the region, and that human connectivity we talked about, and also from an aviation perspective, if we are to develop, we need to look at developing businesses in those business-friendly routes. We need to think about where Turkish Airlines can be involved, more premium cabins. If we are to develop business, we need to have an air transport offer worthy of this name. And if we look at the offer which is available across Africa and Mauritius, and what the demand is, clearly there's room for, in the short to medium term, having increased cooperations with airlines like yours to improve that connectivity with quality travel. And there's also the private jet infrastructure. Huge corporates are moving to Africa. The world knows that this is the region where the next frontier of economic growth is already happening. The question is, who will be there to take the lead and make it happen? Now, and finally, we can talk a bit about tourism as well, by increasing frequencies, hub and spoke models, but also one thing that has always been dear to me, having been from the airline industry, it is about not just the fifth and sixth freedom rights. It is about exploring the possibilities for seventh freedom rights, where airlines, which are not from any of the countries in Africa, are able to connect point A to point B in Africa, not even starting from Turkey, for instance. If this can happen, and that will require governments to agree to that and states to agree to that, but in this gathering here and in the wider gathering, there are many decision makers at the government level, decision makers at the private sector. I do think that in the short term, having a seventh freedom approach, increasingly in a controlled manner, where African airlines can also participate, that I think is the shortest way to really unlock value into Africa. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. Yes, welcome, Mr. Charles Linjap from Cameroon. Yes, the airlines in Africa and the airports, they are mainly state-owned. What do you think in the future, these airlines, there can be a privatization or other investment types can involve this? What's your project for future?
Okay, thank you so much for giving me the floor to talk about the aviation value chain. Prior to responding to your question specifically, which is about public-private partnership, I would like to elaborate quickly on context, public policy relevance, and regulatory framework, public policy coherence and regulatory framework, as well as existing challenges before coming to that. So in terms of context, the aviation value chain in Africa currently generates a market capitalization of $79 billion US dollars annually. And there is a potential for this capitalization to grow to about 10 trillion US dollars if the markets are harmonized. That is the first aspect. Second, in terms of job, every one job out of 61 jobs in Africa is in the aviation value chain. And then the third context is the market capacity. Africa is currently 1.5 billion people, and it will become the biggest demographically biggest continent by 2050, about 2.7 billion people. So you can see that not just the financial assets gonna grow, but the need to fly quickly will become an absolute necessity. And when it comes to policy coherence, regulatory coherence, the African Union has created what you call the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is having one major framework agreement and 5 protocols. The protocol on trading in services is what going to regulate the aviation sector, but they discovered that there were missing gaps. So they had to create what you call the single African transport, the single African air transport market, SATTIM. SATTIM is in discussion. I'm fortunate to be a lead consultant with the African Union on economic policy issues for the past 9 years. So this particular work stream, I lead it. The problem is that Africa is currently having several bilateral aviation agreements between African countries in a single market, which is logically not correct. But you know, all habits die hard. The reason why countries don't want to depart from bilateral to multilateral, they're going to lose money, parking fees, servicing fees, and many other things. But there is a need for the SATTIM, the single air market transport, to create a gap funding and other aviation treasury reserves to address the issues of countries having a kind of paranoid of losing money, you know. So all of this would take time. It's not easy to build consensus in the African Union. Just like in the European Union, consensus building is very difficult. Even in the US, we can see it with Democrats and Republicans building consensus in common markets. They are very difficult. But everything being equal, I think post this discussion, we're going to accelerate discussions about ensuring that the single air transport market is quickly done. About almost 30 African countries have ratified the protocol. It's another protocol. So there are 2 protocols in the African Union which are very important to facilitate business. You have the SATTIM protocol, that's the single air transport, and you have the free movement protocol, because you can't create the market without moving people and moving goods. Now, the third aspect in policy dimension is moving capital. The aviation sector has huge potential, but assets management in this sector, it's still a problem. Commercial banks have not been designed to quickly fund this sector, because commercial banks are not even instruments for long-term funding, but aviation needs long-term liability. So there is a need to build assets management firms like BlackRock's, Vanguard's in the US, in both Turkey and Africa, and possibly the Istanbul Stock Exchange and other African stock exchanges, as well as other assets management companies in Turkey. They should be able to blend their efforts, mutualize their efforts in order to make capital available for a sector that can grow immensely within the next decade. Another challenge is that of African needs within the next decade, 2,000 modern aircrafts. Airbus 330, Airbus 350, 900, Airbus 3000. We will need much money to buy these aircrafts. So it's not about the aviation companies producing this money. It's about the assets management companies investing this money. So one of the things we have to do in the SATTIM tool will be to ensure that private capital can come into this sector. And it comes to the question, the private sector partnership question you posed to me. Believe me, Africa has been constructed since independence to date through the use of public funds. Africa has dormant capital of $3.6 trillion. Most of it is in Mauritius and it's not harnessed. African governments are still going to borrow money from Eurobonds, in the US, from IMF, World Bank is still BlackRock's and Vanguard's putting private capital there. So there is this paradox of financial engineering, where Africans go to borrow money outside when they have dormant capital hidden. In Morocco, Morocco is a financial paradise. They have a secrecy law. So high worth African individuals put their money in Mauritius, and it's dead in Mauritius. So we are finding a policy framework where this capital could be harnessed in terms of assets management and injected into the aviation sector. So the fragmentation of the capital markets in Africa is another issue. Every country has its own small law about the capital markets as well as the money markets. It makes it difficult for capital to leave, say, Morocco to Cameroon. It makes it to leave South Africa to, say, Egypt. You will be embarrassed that South Africa, for example, will trade much with the US than trading within the continent. In fact, they were the first beneficiary of the AGOA, the American Africa free trade framework. But when they started losing it from the ongoing trade wars, they are not still rethinking quickly how they can regain markets in Africa. So there is a need to do financial re-engineering in Africa for people to know that you cannot be having 1.5 billion people, and there are dormant private capital, which is the question you posed to me. Even here in Turkey, your financial markets, I don't know the famous asset managers here, but I don't think we lack them in Turkey and in Africa. But there will be a need for Turkey and Africa. I would encourage, it's a recommendation, that this panel, as well as the entry points in the African Union, should create a post-reflection framework where the assets management companies in Turkey and those in Africa can come together, the Cape Town, Joburg stock market, the BV market, Douala, Cameroon. They can all come and find a way on how they can inject trillions of US dollars into this sector. So, to the best of my knowledge, aviation sector will not be only developed by state parties to the SATIM where they build airports and they think it's enough. No. The aviation sector, to the best of my knowledge, will require a holistic or a globalized approach, where even Turkey, that has a centralized geographical location, can become an integrated air market partner. Turkey shouldn't be an observer, but should become an integrated air market partner in the sense that they can create the Istanbul airport to become the global roving, both cargo and human roving hub for all African airlines in the SATIM. And then there is a possibility of the Turkish airport to become partners in African airports in terms of cargo. They build the cargo hubs, and this is going to generate jobs for both in terms of win-win. It's going to generate immense opportunities in terms of jobs and capital mobilization and profit building and so on. So I think public-private partnership is the way forward. But one last thing, public-private partnership is supposed to be evaluated from the PEFRAM framework, what you call physical risks assessment framework. There are 11 risks to be assessed, and African governments, I'm sorry to say, they don't have adequate capacity when it comes to this. I don't know the experience on the side of Turkey, but Europe, PPP constructed several airports in Europe and even the airlines. So if we want to replicate that experience, we will have to get the African Union and the member states to take PPP as an approach, because most people think PPP is a failure. No. The risks assessment, if it's not properly done, it will crash. So if you give a good recipe to bad cooks, it's gonna crash. But if you make them good cooks and give them the recipe, they're gonna make it happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Now, for closing remarks, I want to ask one more question, short questions. These questions will be more Türkiye, Africa oriented. Sayın Genel Müdürüm, aslında ilk
I want to ask you, of course in TABEF you have seen, and we have seen, that there is an important cooperation and brotherhood between Africa and Turkey. And I want to ask you this aspect in terms of aviation, bilateral agreements, aviation agreements, and also our friends who came from the continent of Africa, as they mentioned, in a common airport or free air areas. Do you have any projection about what can be done in the future, what is to come? Increasing the connectivity is of course important, and it affects a lot of different sectors, and bilateral agreements that we already have done with different countries increased in number, and of course we are cooperating with African countries, and ICANN meetings annually, we see them being applied in these meetings especially. And in this bilateral agreement, there are already the seventh right has to be improved, of course, and there is a process. The fifth, the traffic right, can be only done by tracing the traffic, and we already have this mindset of contribution, and of course with all the civil authorities that we talk to, civil aviation authorities talk to, we are trying to be constructive, and all our relations are always towards more contribution and what we can do. And our brothers and sisters from the African countries, thankfully they are always so honest and so candid when they are dealing with these issues. It is much different to what we see in Europe or other continents, so we are really happy to be making these agreements, and this relation comes from the big connectivity, extensive connectivity that we have, and the good relations that we have. And lastly, these platforms and systems that we talked about, and how we can mirror these projects in Africa. We talked about this, but this is not based on dependence. This platform is to facilitate the building of an independent aviation market. So that's really important. So I'm not really for anything such as what Europe does, making other countries dependent with similar projects or platforms. So I think this is really something that we need to reiterate. These types of platforms can easily be mirrored in Africa, and in order for these platforms and systems to occur in Africa, of course the aviation, a common terminology should be created, and the levels should be at an equal level in terms of aviation. But all I can say is that we have other skills there. Terminal operations, building of airports, and the ground services companies maturing there or bringing these services to there. We are doing this in many parts of the world, and in Africa, of course, in the upcoming years, we can rapidly realize all these. Thank you very much. As far as I understand, that we are providing technical trainings, licensings, and we will share our experiences. And with the digital transformation projects that you talked about, new softwares, I think, will be critical yes, it will make this process a little bit more standardized, and it will be more rapid at a fast pace, and you know, improving the skills of the people, training people in these areas, and thus creating a common terminology. I think in a very fast-paced manner, they will reach the same level that we already had for many years. I want to continue with the issue of training. I want to ask my question to Fırat Ocak. Istanbul Airport is one of the biggest airports in the world. IGA is the operator, and in various aviation meetings I see the IGA Academy, and you give training with IGA and for the personnel as well. Do you have similar strategies for Africa operating a big airport, or can you share your experiences from here with us? Thank you. Yeah, IGA Academy, I'm really happy that you mentioned that. I talk about it everywhere. It's really active, and they're doing really great work. And all they are the training partners for IATA, ACI, IQ, and Eurocontrol as well. They are providing trainings to different sections of the aviation world, and a lot of people come from different parts of the world to Istanbul to get these trainings, and it's really improved. What I can say about Africa is that IGA Academy for the developing countries, including some African countries, we have 15% of discount for these countries, just so that, you know, there could be a contribution to increasing the number of trainings that we provide for the developing countries in the aviation sector. And 821 free trainings were provided as well, and most of these trainings, free trainings, went to the aforementioned, just like I mentioned before, African countries. And we just want to invite people, companies, to get these trainings from IGA Academy, and we are always ready to cooperate, especially with African countries. We look forward to it.
Duda, just short remarks. For a corporation in aviation for Turkey and Africa, what steps can be done first? What steps can be taken for a partnership between Turkey and Africa in aviation cooperation?
As I say, I'm always putting on the table the issue of training.
Yeah.
Before I say that there was a need for the next 20 years of 23,000 pilots, but there's also a need for mechanics.
Yeah.
Plane cannot fly without mechanics. So we have to make room for that. I would like to thank here Professor Kemal for all the disposition they had for cooperating with African countries, either with governments or private sector. And I really heard what Mr. Firat said, Mr. Firat of the IGA Academy, 50% off training for the African countries? 15, please, 15. It's not enough, but we accept it. These are the kind of things that we can do, we can negotiate. But if you want to be a great actor in Africa, if you want to take advantage of this great market, you have to go for a sustainable solution, which is training. Put the people in the center of your action. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Niyazi Holash. Also, what's your decision for future collaboration? But I want to ask, you are from finance sector, so financial problems of airline industry in Africa and what can be done for that? In a short 3 minutes, I need your answer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Is my microphone working? Now it is. Good. Sorry for that. So I think in a nutshell, even in Mauritius, but in Africa in general, accessing finance has been a historical problem. Why? It also overlaps very much into what Charles just said a bit earlier around the lack of asset management services across Africa. So those who are financing airlines, okay, the large financing companies and banks, etc., they will be looking at country risk first and the airline risk, etc. When they look at the models, they find they're quite hesitant to go and finance airlines for their development. So in part, I do think it's important that we have a holistic approach. Now, by having airlines like Turkish Airlines, like stronger airlines, more established, viable airlines, having closer partnerships and JVs, it might be on a full airline basis or might be on certain routes. These are the type of very low-hanging fruits which airlines in Africa can take so that they de-risk their operation. And with that de-risking of the operations, then the dormant capital, okay, will find those opportunities attractive. But it's not just that. The other challenge of the airlines, okay, is the good people in Africa, many of them go elsewhere. And that is the plight which not just Mauritius faces. I'm sure many of the African airlines face and countries. The top talent end up working either in the States, in Europe, or parts of the world, other parts, Australia. They are still in Africa, but not the quantity that we need or the quantity that is available. So what do we do, okay, as countries, as economies, to make our countries attractive to our qualified people? And all of this, it's a holistic approach we need to take. It's an approach at the level of governments to create the enabling frameworks. When what the professor just said here a bit earlier, it is about 7th freedom rights. It is about taking the longer term view, because quite simply put, left to airlines only, the progress will not happen. Why? Because airlines are organizations. Organizations are made up of people who've got their KPIs, and who is going to work for a KPI which doesn't result immediately in profits for the short term, long term. So this is where we get that issue around people hesitant about losing the parking fees and landing rights, etc. But at the end of the day, if we look at it from a more holistic perspective, at the end, okay, if you liberalize the airlines, economies grow. It's not about playing a zero-sum game. It's about really putting that message out there and making our actions follow. That it's not about sharing, getting a smaller slice of the pie. It's about creating a bigger cake to share for everyone. And for me, with that mindset, how do we get there?
With all respect.
Sorry. So very, very quickly, I think we have to start a pilot phase, right? Okay, learn the lessons, publicize the success, and collaborate. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Linchap, what's your last remarks? What can be done for Türkiye, Africa Aviation Corporation? What's the next step in 3 minutes, please?
Yes, I would strongly recommend, in fact, my recommendations are predicated on a three-pronged approach. The first is about ensuring that there is a policy and regulatory framework that takes Turkey as a strategic geographical positioning partner Because when I look at the African triangle, and then I extend it to Turkey as a centralized hub, there is so much they can do if Turkey is integrated into the single African air transport market. But there is a need to build a new mindset because Africans, what you call 54 countries, they were named using colonial methods. We are all Africans, but you're gonna be shocked. Someone would tell you, I'm Zambian, I'm Cameroonian. These names were not given by Africans. People were colonized, and they were even told in their own jargon that you are an illiterate. So people have been destroyed mentally. There is a need to decolonize minds, and it has to happen through very firm policies and regulatory framework. Africa should not be looked upon like 54 countries. It should be looked upon like a continent, a market, a common market with 1.5 billion, that's gonna attain 2.03 billion in 2050. We even need to have strong negotiation rights when it comes to bargaining. These things are not happening because the subteam is not there, but I see the absolute need to construct it and not to limit it to Africa, to ensure that even the African diaspora are gonna be part of the single African transport market, to ensure that investors, we can create investors' rights. Turkish Airways can have what you call roving rights to have any location. For example, Cameroon is at the center of the equator. Cameroon, Brazil is 6 hours. Cameroon, Argentina is 7 hours. It's not happening. My country is not doing that. I was consulted to advise. They are not doing that because those who are involved, if the vision is small, they're gonna just be doing small things. So we need to think big and we act big. So that's the first. The second is the assets management thing.
With all respect,
yes. The second is the asset management thing. There is a need to build a blended asset management approach between Turkey and Africa. The aviation people, the mechanics, the pilots, even the airline managers, is not their domain to do assets management. You have to get the asset management experts and tell them we want long-term liabilities for this sector, and we need that you leverage additional funding for the sector. This is whole another agenda that's gonna happen. So personally for the AU, I will take this recommendation there. And then the third dimension is the technical cooperation. Technical cooperation, money shouldn't be the issue. The fallouts of training African pilots and granting servicing here in Turkey gonna generate significant amount of money for Turkey. So, but if you make the training difficult, and then we want to grow companies that do not have access to human resources, we're gonna be stifled. So I would recommend that in the next TABEF, the African Union, through the AUC chairperson, should have a technical memorandum of understanding with Turkey on this training issue, and should lobby that it's fundamentally affordable for any African that want to do aviation business. So these are the three levels of things I wanted to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Before closing, I just want to mention that Türkiye will always stand with African countries and never let colonizers come back to Africa. Bu panel için hepinize çok teşekkür ederim. Gerçekten bugün burada çok saygıdeğer konukları ağırladık. Bir moderatör olarak çok...
As a moderator of this panel, I was really happy to have all of our panelists here, our General Director, IGA Manager, Costa Duarda, Cameroon, and Mauritius. We have our very esteemed people here. We talked about the cooperation and the importance of training and what can be done with Turkish Airlines, other carriers, other companies. How can we become role models for African aviation, civil aviation as well. We would like to thank all of our panelists for coming here and for their insights. And also DEİK put really big effort into this organization. So I want to thank Mr. Evren for their efforts, and thank you, our panelists. Dear participants, Türkiye Africa Civil Aviation Cooperation Panel has come to an end. We would like to thank our moderators and panelists and you for your participation. Thank you.
Forumumuzun kapanış töreni Türkiye Cumhurbaşkanımız Sayın Recep Tayyip Erdoğan ve Güney Afrika Cumhuriyeti Devlet Başkan Yardımcısı Sayın Paul Mashatile teşrifleriyle B2 katında Harbiye Auditorium'unda gerçekleşecektir.